कौन हो तुम? रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे बाप होते हैं।
पूरे 100 व्यू और 20 सब्सक्राइबर आ गए हमारे पास। दिस इज द पॉडकास्ट ऑफ पॉडकास्ट्स। हम अपने घर वालों को भी नहीं ला पाए सब्सक्राइब करने, तो बहुत मजा आ रहा है। और गुरुजी ने भी क्या बोलते हैं, हाथ जोड़ लिए हैं। 2 दिन से बीमार हो गए एक पॉडकास्ट करने के बाद। उनके घर पे 15 लोग हैं, पर उनसे भी नहीं सब्सक्राइब करा पाए गुरुजी।
एक तो घर वालों को समझाना मुश्किल है कि हम लोग काम क्या करते हैं, ऊपर से वो सुनेंगे थोड़ी हम लोग बोल क्या रहे हैं उसके बारे में। I think we're bored them to death. Yeah, it's very complicated.
Yeah, but I think उनको जबरदस्ती बोल के लाइक, शेयर, सब्सक्राइब, रिंग द बेल आइकन करना पड़ेगा, तभी आगे बढ़ेंगे। बढ़ना तो मुश्किल है।
True that.
Yes, पावल साहब अपनी स्पीच दे रहे हैं, थोड़ी देर सुननी है कि या लेट इट गो कि we know what he's going to say, right? Or is he going to say like something really unexpected?
Well, to be honest, इसकी speech में he usually says the entire the document that they release at 10 a.m. or 2 p.m. in that time. वो उसमें वो ये होता है कि Fed ने rate cut किए। अब now the block points to discuss that he has is basically the rate cuts, ठीक है, that they're ending quantitative tightening by 1st of December.
Yes.
There is no news of QE as such.
Yes.
Right. Assumption is that as soon as it ends, QE should start, but that doesn't really necessarily has to happen. And I think the other thing is and to be honest, one of the things is that they don't have enough data because of the government shutdown, right? So they are basically this rate cut that they did was more like a हाँ बस करना है तो करना है.
So there is no data because of government shutdown, but the government shutdown seems like कि कोई data है नहीं. कभी-कभी ऐसा भी लग रहा है मेरे को कि इनके इन्फ्लेशन नंबर्स ऊपर जा रहे थे, जॉब्स नंबर्स नीचे आ रहे हैं, इनको समझ में आ नहीं रहा क्या करना है। महंगाई ऊपर जा रही है और लोग एम्प्लॉयमेंट गिर रही है, इससे अच्छा डेटा ही मत निकालो।
Exactly. I mean, even now their inflation, and recently in the basically the minutes of the meeting that they released for the Fed, they said that the inflation data has substantially increased again. So
S&P is crashing, Nasdaq is crashing. Like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But when you say crashing, how much?
Just
yeah, is it Kunal crashing? Is it like one entire cycle is down and 1 minute candles? Yeah.
Everything is 1 minute.
Doomed. Jump out of the window, guys.
Kunal lives through 10 different cycles every day in his 1 minute chart.
तो एक फीडबैक मुझे आया है कि हमें थोड़ा बहुत ना, हम जो बातें करते हैं वो सबकी समझ में नहीं आता, तो थोड़ा बहुत एक्सप्लेन करना चाहिए कि what is QT, what is QE and why is Fed rate so important. So मेरे हिसाब से मास्टर जी इज लाइक, एक जमाने में टीचर बनना चाहते थे, मास्टर रियलिस्ट, तो he should explain कि
yes. Master realist explain what QT, QE and Fed rates are and how they affect the market.
Yes.
All right. Fed rates are basically the money at which borrowers can borrow money, right? The lower the rates, the lower the cost of capital. मतलब अगर आप 100 रुपए लेते हो, right, किसी से borrow करते हो और उसका interest rate 5% है, तो आपको उसको 105 रुपए वापस करने हैं, तो आप सोच के लोगे उससे पैसा. And at the same time, अगर मान लो 100 रुपए पे कोई 5% दे रहा है, तो आप instead of going and buying, say, equities or risk on assets or crypto, because it's relevant to us, you will rather go and buy treasury जिसमें आपको 5% ब्याज मिल रहा है. It's like doing a fixed deposit, right? So there are two different ways of looking at interest rates. Quantitative tightening is basically when the Fed tries to suck out money from the economy and dissuades people from taking loans, because if say the interest rate is high, then the people who are looking to take loans won't take loans because the cost of capital becomes high. कि अगर कोई बंदा बोल रहा है कि मैं 100 रुपए बोरो कर रहा हूँ, मेरे को उस पर 5% ब्याज देना पड़ेगा, तो रहने देता हूँ, अभी बाद में कभी लूंगा जब कॉस्ट ऑफ कैपिटल सस्ता हो जाएगा. एंड एट द सेम टाइम, लाइक आई सेड अर्लियर, वो बंदा बोल सकता है कि मैं जाके 100 रुपए ब्याज खाता हूँ इस पे और 5% ब्याज कमाता हूँ इस पे. सो क्वांटिटेटिव टाइटनिंग इज व्हेन बेसिकली द फेड इज increasing rates and they want to suck out liquidity from the system. Quantitative easing is right the opposite of this, is basically when the Fed is lowering interest rates, which basically means that it is again doing two things. जो बंदा बोल रहा है कि मैं एफडी कर लेता हूँ, तो फेड उसको बोल रहा है नहीं एफडी करके फायदा नहीं है, बिकॉज आपको इंटरेस्ट रेट कम मिल रहा है इस पे। मैंने अभी 5% से इंटरेस्ट रेट घटा के 2.5% कर दिया मैंने। तो वो बंदा बोल रहा है मैं $100 पे $2.5 $100 डाल के $2.5 क्या कमाऊंगा, उससे अच्छा मैं कुछ रिस्क ऑन एसेट खरीद लेता हूँ। फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई कैन गो बाय क्रिप्टो, आई कैन गो बाय एक्विटीज और व्हाट नॉट, एंड एट द सेम टाइम it's incentivizing or it's nudging the borrower to borrow more, because the borrower can think that okay, $100 but I just have to pay $2.50 as interest. It's a good time as opposed to paying $5 in interest. So let me now borrow this $100. Let me do something with it. Let me go consume things. Let me go buy things. Let me go buy risk on assets. And then जब पैसे वापस देने की बारी आएगी, then I'll return this $102.5. So QT is essentially bad for consumption. It's bad. I mean, we'll talk about this more on how the market sort of preempts all of these things. Yesterday, when we spoke about sell the news event, what does that mean? But yeah, so quantitative tightening is effectively bad for consumption, bad for risk on assets, and quantitative easing is good for consumption and good for risk on assets.
It seems like it's a sell the news event, by the way.
Yeah, looks like it. I actually have a point of view on that, but yeah.
Right? Okay, this will look more like sell the news, because all of this was actually priced in. You could have you could see it in the charts. Okay,
Yes.
It all stemmed like it was all priced in. Ajay, one question when you're talking about quantitative easing and quantitative tightening. So quantitative easing usually in lines very much when there is like market bubbles popping and stuff like that, right? So whenever there has been quantitative easing and Feds have lowered their interest rate, usually that follows a sort of crash for a short period of time.
That's because it gives some sort of a signal. Because say when the Fed is sort of, so there are two ways of looking at this. So one on one side, when we said that the Fed is not getting enough data, right? So one thing is it's not getting enough inflation data because obviously because of the government shutdown. And the most important thing, it's not getting unemployment data, right? Which is, I mean, for it, the principal source of unemployment. If inflation can actually be fetched from other sources, but unemployment data is something which directly comes from the Labor Department. So that's something that it's not getting. But what effectively the Fed tracks or tries to track is actually 2-year treasury yield, right? And if 2-year treasury yield is going down, then the Fed effectively tries to match that. So it effectively tries to match that using its interest rates. We'll explain that later on in the conversation. But what you mentioned is usually when the stance changes from QT to QE, which is tightening to maybe easing, there is a short sort of crash that happens. That's because it's a sell the news event, because uske pehle usually the markets are anyway rising, because everyone's sort of expecting, because the Fed will never always be in QT mode, will never always be in QE mode. Now the bet here is for how long. So when there is QT, a long time of quantitative tightening happening, which basically means money is being sucked out of the economy. So there's a section of population which says that, okay, it's not going to be there forever. So let's keep on accumulating risk on assets right now, because there will come a time when QE will happen, which is why all throughout this QT cycle where Feds were tightening rates or sort of sucking out liquidity from the markets, BTC was rising anyway, S&P was rising anyway, right? They were anticipating that one day this is going to happen. So it's usually like a sell the news event that we discuss that, chalo ab to ho gaya, now what next? So the speculators sort of start pulling out. Secondly, what happens is, usually when the Fed sort of knee-jerk moves from QT to QE, today I don't think it's a knee-jerk reaction because they planned it. Yeah. Usually these knee-jerk reactions, when they, and that is coincided with one other data point. Usually these big crashes which happen when the Fed moves from QT to QE, it is coupled by unemployment data, big spikes in unemployment data. So what that signals the market is that unemployment is on the rise, and the Fed right now is trying to pump in money into the economy as a knee-jerk reaction because underlying economy is fucked up, right? And that is something that gives this sort of a negative sentiment to the market, which is why this crash happens. But like I mentioned, it coincides with unemployment data being very bad, जो अभी हमारे पास है नहीं. So it's hard to say that this is a hard stance from QT to QE. I think this is very gradual. And देखा जाए कायदे से, the Fed has been cutting rates since last year, by the way. right?
Yes.
So none of this is anything new. Like the Fed has been cutting rates from 5.5% to whatever it is today, right? So we've anyway been on this steady decline, but हम still QT mode में थे because the Fed was like, I'm cutting rates, I am pausing or cutting, but you know what? In my mind, I want to still keep on sucking out money from the economy. But
And to be
now that they
honest,
said, yeah,
and in the meantime, and I think over the last 6-7 months, what they've also been doing is very quietly. They haven't ended QT, but they've been reducing the tightening. So they've been buying back in slowly and gradually, right? So it's not something that is openly said as QE. But what they're doing is they're basically sort of loosening the QT slowly and gradually, and that is what you're saying, that it's a very gradual move. So it's not going to be like a knee-jerk reaction. They've already been doing it, and it will just come a point where they'll be like, okay, today we're stopping QT. And usually what happens is after QT ends, if it's a gradual one, what they've done is they take about a month or two to initiate QE, and in those 2 months is where we see that sort of collapse happening in the market, where people are selling the event, and that is where you see most of the crashes happening, right? I think the last time QT and QE happened, right, it was somewhere around so the QT ended somewhere in November 2022 or 2021, I don't remember exactly, and then QE happened somewhere in January or February, and the market sort of reacted to it maybe 2 months later. So it was March, April, where we started seeing the major spikes happening in the market.
Yeah.
I mean,
Guys,
they
ये-
were like
हाँ, बोल.
taking it very slow, right? And now how effective has it been? Like ये इन्होंने जो strategy अपनाई थी कि हम reduce करते हैं QT like very slowly, and then we will gradually like move it on to QE at some point. Is beach mein there have been a lot of uncertainties because of Trump tariffs, and I like about a year back or a year or a couple of years back, even when Biden was president, there was like this big thing that we're going to go in, US is going to go into a recession, and then they said, we're going to play it such that like we get a soft landing or a hard landing, and iski baat chal rahi thi. And what we see is like a softer landing it was, but from here on out, if you see, like the smaller banks are like very stressed right now, right? And अब वो QT end करके QE कर रहे हैं. So how ये जो पूरा फेज चला है, इससे इनकी इकोनॉमी क्या डैमेज हुई है या नहीं हुई है, या it has it been better for the economy?
So I was looking at a data point because I think GDP growth for US, when it was quoted once, the last time I remember seeing it was roughly in the early 2% range, I think, is what was quoted. And there was an interesting data point that if you eliminate or if you take out the amount of money which has been pumped into AI as a sector, right? The overall growth was only 0.1%, right? So roughly about 95% of the growth was just because money was being pumped into AI. And in today's day and age, investable AI is only in the US, right? Whether if somebody sitting in India wants to invest in AI, I mean, China is obviously a closed door. I mean, you can't really go there. The Chinese markets at a point of time, I think, was quite attractive. But anyway, if you want to go get into investable consumer-centric AI, or even maybe enterprise AI, the only place is the US. And that's what's happening. Like globally across the world, because of this AI bubble getting created and everybody sort of flocking towards AI, all of that money is flowing into the US. Because of that, the GDP grew by 2.1%, right? 2%, whatever. I mean, don't quote me on this. Somebody can easily Google it. The actual growth rate was 0.1%. So was the economy struggling? Of course. I think if you put capital markets aside, and if you ignore FDI and if you look at investments aside, the core economy didn't really grow as much. It only grew by 0.1%, right? That's practically negligible growth, or that's borderline recession. Now, coming back to a different perspective, is the current stance of saying that QT is ending, is that a bad thing? I think it's going to be taken positively by the markets. That's how I see it, because technically interest rates are being slashed since the middle of last year. right? So it's already, so we've effectively been in an interest rate easing sort of era for quite some time already. It's just that why is majority of crypto frustrated today? Because that decline in interest rates hasn't translated into the altcoin basket
Yes,
rising. Let's be frank.
yeah,
Let's be
definitely,
frank, right? That
definitely.
is
Yes.
It has
हमारे
met the
pipelines में
crypto
चले बस
expectation
हमारा
as such.
मतलब जली हुई, मतलब बाजार की जली हुई इसलिए है बिकॉज वो पैसा वहां पे नहीं गया, वो पैसा बिटकॉइन में गया, बट गया है वो पैसा वहां पे,
और
राइट?
अभी
एंड वो
जा रहा
पैसा, हाँ, एंड अभी भी जा रहा है, एंड गोल्ड में भी जा रहा है. Obviously, the S&P has been in correction mode for quite some time. It's been chopping around here and there. It's been making these sort of blank highs here and there. But let me be very frank, topping out of the S&P, topping out of any markets, whether it's BTC, anything, it won't be a one-day event. Tops are usually created over a period of time, right? So if we've seen even in crypto, whether so होता है ना कि हमारा
real top,
एक टॉप आता है, फिर बाजार गिरती है जिसमें ऑल्ट्स डेसिमेट होते हैं, आधे हो जाते हैं, फिर से एक हाई मारता है, and then the market sort of tops
Yeah,
out,
the double
right?
top, yeah.
So exactly. So topping out is a phase. Bottoms are events. बॉटम एक दिन में लगता है, एंड वो 6 महीने बाद जाके पता लगता है, 1 महीने बाद जाके पता लगता है बॉटम में है. बॉटम धीरे धीरे नहीं लगते, बॉटम एक दिन में लगता है अगर क्लाइमैक्टिक बॉटम है तो.
रखते हैं, बट आई वुड से द रियल बॉटम्स व्हेन लाइक जब रिवर्सल, एक्चुअल रिवर्सल होता है मार्केट्स में, it is a gradual up. You won't find like a
the up move will be gradual, but that
reversal. The reversal is
reversal will be, could be gradual, could be, yeah, could be, but that panic sell candle will be a one day event. टॉप जिंदगी में नहीं लगता वैसे, टॉप कभी नहीं लगेगा वैसे. तो अभी बेसिकली दिस शिफ्ट फ्रॉम QT to no QT, I think will be taken positively by the market, is what I kind of feel. And this should somehow translate into some sort of bottoms getting created in, I would say, altcoin pairs. Yeah, that's what I feel.
नरकुंडी, मैं जैसे एक बात पूछना चाहता हूँ कि मार्केट में एक बहुत बड़ी नरकुंडी दिख रही है मुझे कि तेरा S&P is like all time highs, तेरा gold is pretty much all time highs, तेरा BTC is today it's not like it's corrected a little from its all time highs, but it's just like still again near all time highs. So ये देख के तुझे क्या लग रहा है, तेरे अंदर क्या फीलिंग आ रही है ऐसी, कि क्या करेगी बाजार? मेरे बहुत सारे डेट्स खुले हैं and you're my counter indicator.
बंद कर दे.
You think it's going to go higher?
No, I think. So इसमें दो चीजें.
We're running. Yes.
1 minute candle.
Jim Cramer has spoken.
Yes.
Inverse Cramer.
जिम क्रेमर के ऊपर काली बिल्ली दौड़ गई हो, ये वो है.
जिम कुमार. अच्छा, एक चीज था कि जो S&P का ट्रैक किया, so besides tech sector, it's been flat. Now, Vanguard का एक स्टॉक है VXUS, which tracks rest of markets except US.
Yes.
Now, it's not that this point about AI is only leading the S&P rallies is being ignored by others. Like VXUS is up 20% in 1 year, which is very unusual for. Huh? VXUS Vanguard का है.
Rest of the world. Rest of the world index. Yeah, rest of the world index. Yeah.
That is up 20% in last 1 year, which is very unusual. Last 5 years का अगर आप देखो, it's been on a slow burner while US equities have been rising throughout.
Correct.
I know for a fact that has happened because I have some tech funds that I've invested in, right? Different markets. So I have in Singapore, I have in India, and I have in US as well. So when Trump came into power, right, and when he started this whole tariff things, right, all of my tech funds were literally in negatives. Because उस time पे वो tariffs का था, and there was very high
20-25%
where the market is going to go. That's the beginning, first quarter of 2025. So I called my wealth management guy and I told him कि भाई यार ये मसला है. What do we do? Do I pull out? I mean, what's the point of having them? I can move that in because उस time पे तो दिमाग में ये था ना कि यार crypto BTC भागेगा 2-2.5 लाख पे. Let's move that money to BTC. I'd rather make money here. And he was like, you know what? Just wait, because the guys who are basically, these funds are like these hedge funds, long and short together. And it's like these guys are saying, okay, just hold on. Like those guys had sort of a foresight already, and they were like, no, hold on, these things are going to explode in the next 2 or 3 quarters. So I had a discussion with my guy today, right? And वो मुझे ये बोल रहा था कि जितने भी funds हैं, they're all above like 15%, 16%, 18%. One of them has actually done 25%. So in this whole time, and it's across they're all making money. It's not just US that is actually booming in AI and tech narrative. It's across the globe. It's happening together. And for me, one thing I feel is it is sort of scary, because whenever something that is expanding so quickly globally, usually there is a time when that bubble really pops, and when that happens, then it takes the entire market down with it.
Yeah.
So ये स्क्रीन दिख रहा है मेरा?
तेरे फंड्स वाली बात सही है डूड. LIC वाले पता नहीं ईयरली कुछ 30-35% रिटर्न्स दे रहे हैं. लाइक माय LIC एजेंट, इट इज नॉट इंश्योरेंस, लाइक दे आर नाउ ऑफरिंग like investment, like in
they do ULIPs also. They do ULIPs as well.
So they are giving 30-35% return in a year, which is a lot for LIC. Like I mean, LIC does not generally give that high.
Yeah. ये स्क्रीन दिख रहा है मेरा?
नहीं, तेरी शक्ल दिख रही है बस.
Okay.
Where is the fedora?
Yeah, where's the fedora?
अरे रह गया यार. उसको मैं
बोलता बस है, तू बोलता बस है, पर रोज
I don't think you have one. Yeah, I don't think you have one. You probably have like one of those straw caps that you call fedora.
Actually, you know what we need? इतने अच्छे views आ रहे हैं अपने कि I think we should like get like a
मेरे को refresh करके देख रहा है.
Refresh.
I think एक खूबसूरत लड़की को लाना पड़ेगा इस पॉडकास्ट पे, ताकि हर शॉर्ट्स उसी की शक्ल पे हो, ताकि लोग एटलीस्ट क्लिक करके देखें तो सही ये बात क्या कर रहे हैं.
Because anime crowd को खींचना है. Okay.
और I was like looking at some podcast and something, लोग एकदम ही फालतू कुछ भी बोल रहे हैं, but you know they
of course
something controversial.
VXUS up 20% in last 1 year. इसको zoom out करके 5 साल का देख लो. Since 2020, 21, 2020, 5 साल में सिर्फ 30% हुए, and last 1 year itself में 20% hit up हो चुका है. So VXUS used to be like most hated ETF in portfolio. क्या है, US का बढ़े जा रहा है, लोग का नहीं हो रहा है, and now it's also heating up. And एक और point था कि क्या बोलते हैं कि what happens after rate cut, does the market crash or not? I think इसका रे डालियो ने डाला था ट्विटर पे लंबा सा आर्टिकल. उसमें 2 सिनेरियो थे कि 1, are you expecting a low growth or a high growth scenario right now? If it's a low growth, तो rate cut से नहीं affect होएगा. Markets will continue to bleed little bit. But if there's high growth in economy and then rate cut होता है, then it's like a double multiply. कि okay, rate cut भी हो गए and growth भी आपकी ज़्यादा हो रही है. But now,
are you saying are we in a period of low growth? Because as per
that's what it feels like right now.
Huh?
If you remove AI, then everyone.
So US hasn't grown, right, without AI. That's the whole point. Like the US hasn't grown. US is in a topping out phase, but these tops, like I mentioned, aren't going to get created in a year's time, because even though the US is in a topping out phase, and that topping out phase and this money movement from US to emerging markets has been the bet for the greater part of the past 2 years. But that money rotation is happening slowly. But at the same time, there is private money which is entering, or now obviously in NVIDIA's as well, because that's one of the stocks which is probably pulling the S&P up at times. But that's where the money. So there is a big large scale top out phase happening, which basically means money moves into emerging economies, which is why Adil's point of view that VXUS is sort of outperformed on a 1 year basis, because I think the S&P has returned somewhere about anywhere in the range of 15 to 20% on a 1 year basis, right? And VXUS has clearly outperformed that. But on ground economy, yes, we are at least the largest consumer in the world, which is roughly what about 20-25% of global GDP is in a low growth mode. and that is evident by
And
the numbers which are already there.
It's not just low growth mode also. We also have to look at charts. For example, default rates, right?
Yeah.
So you look at the car loan defaults, your mortgage defaults, right? They are substantially rising in the US right now.
Correct.
So you have to keep an eye on that also. That means when Fed says that, the inflation seems to be rising, well, one of the reasons why they're actually, it's not just the unemployment data, it's also this sort of data that's coming into them that, their mortgage rates are and default rates are at their extreme high point right now, right? So there is no liquidity in the market as such as well to move or push the market right after QT.
Yeah, correct.
Yes. Liquidity,
which kind of makes sense that they are trying to prop up AI as much as they can and pumping the stocks.
Day by day, you see, right, like the wage gap and obviously not just the income gap, the wealth gap between the 1% and 10% between and the rest of the people. It keeps on increasing. And US में तो especially जो लोग debt में हैं, वो लोग और debt में जा रहे हैं. So
yeah, but unemployment data is not that bad, by the way. Labor data is not that bad. Like from a historical standpoint, we can see that
unemployment, yes. Unemployment, I would say कि unemployment data जो है वो धीरे-धीरे करके थोड़ा नीचे आ रहा है पर धीरे-धीरे करके. But तेरा जो gap है, wealth gap, और people are not saving anymore. Like हमारी generation में, how many people can afford homes? Right, like in people.
Fair enough. That study is very prevalent. Yeah,
not
unless
you're streamer
30%
or OF model.
For a middle class household, that used to be your biggest sort of wealth creator at some point.
Correct. 30%
times your annual income. Now it's
30% of America, 30% of present day America is not propped up about the future. 30% of current day America feels that they can never own a home. Now, that is definitely there, but that's where QE effectively comes in, right? That's where, if owning a home,
what them out, yeah.
Yeah, if owning a home sort of becomes easier from a mortgage standpoint, I think that number should creep up. But again, it's all cyclical, right? Like I mentioned, like
they have student loans.
Despite all of this. But student loans have always been a problem. Credit card debt, I agree. But again, we could talk about the credit bubble bursting, but I kind of feel that in 08, we already saw an issue because of that, right? So it won't happen again, right? It's seldom sort of the same thing won't usually happen. But what I'm saying is unemployment data is still not that bad. We are still probably at decadal lows, and we're probably inching up from there on. There is a bit of rise, there's a bit of volatility around that phase, but overall it's still sort of fine the way I see it. We obviously cannot expect high growth, but let's look at it this way. The new normal interest rates will also not be 0%. The new normal interest rates will also be 2.5%. So the world will adjust itself to the new normal, and that adjusting will take time. Because over the last, I would say 20 odd years or maybe 30 odd years probably, the US has outperformed every other market, even from an equity standpoint, right? It has literally outperformed everything. Now that money rotation is happening, like Adil pointed out, it's surprising that VX US is outperforming, right, on a 1 year basis. Mm-hmm. Now that money rotation is gradually happening, right? Money rotation into gold is gradually happening. Right. So that story is anyway intact, that money flows from emerged to emerging, and that is going to happen. And it's not just the US which is struggling with growth, China is also struggling with growth. Once you sort of enter that band, growth becomes challenging, and the world is now adjusting to this new normal that 2.5% is going to be the new normal. And we are still above that. We are still about 2% above that.
2% above, yeah.
We'll eventually get there, but 2.5% is going to be the new 0%, and the world will adjust to it. Very, very happily, they will adjust to it.
Yeah, sure. Or that is a fair viewpoint, and I'm hoping कि emerging markets में जब जाए तो अपना हम लोगों को मजा आएगा, फिर क्यों?
Yeah, of course.
We've been waiting for that for a while, right? Liquidity to flow to emerging markets. I can see that in India, though. I don't know if you guys have been following the whole startup and IPOs and ye wala pura.
Yeah, bro, the blue chip
Yeah.
IPOs in India are going crazy. I saw that.
Crazy
Are
amount of
crazy.
money.
Yeah.
They are
देखो,
outperforming crypto, bro.
मैं अभी like कुछ family offices और इनके like CEOs और इनसे मिला था जो who invest in like startups, and they were like कि there's like a fight कि इस startup में मैंने पैसे लगाया, अरे यार वो मुझे he needs a bigger logo, जैसे हम crypto में नहीं देखते कि oh they need a bigger logo, इसका logo. अब that is all happening in the startup ecosystem in India. And one of the things that came out from that also was like they were saying कि the current generation वो धंधे पे गल्ले पे नहीं बैठना चाहते हैं. They want to manage family offices.
They want to manage money. They want to manage money. Yeah.
Yes.
But the wealth is in building factories. But
that
wealth is created by building factories. Yeah. Unfortunately, that's where the wealth lies. Wealth creation happens there. But you're right. I also get the same sense from acquaintances as well and friends. Yeah. I mean, I think money management is the new thing that sort of people, as in that's what second and third generations are looking at today.
Yeah, sounds cool, right? I manage a family office. It's just one of those things. It's just
it sounds cool to say I invest. Yeah, exactly. And what David is saying, like investing in startups, whether it's private investing, right, or even if it's like public market investing, like if you think about it, like public market investing has become quite sexy over the past sort of 1 year, right? Especially in India, right? Like the amount of money which is flown into public markets is enormous over the past 2 odd years. And this shift actually happened post-COVID, right? When people saw that V-shaped recovery. And it's growing, like SIP money is flowing in hordes. Demat accounts maxed out. SIP money has maxed out, like in today's day and age. One interesting thing that I'm seeing, and I'm sure Navid, you would also agree because you're also probably seeing that, is number one, people are telling me that मैं अगर 100 कमाता हूँ, right, मेरा goal रहता है कि मैं ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा invest करूँ. That was never there before. And number two, the viewpoint of the market is such. Like, I don't remember our parents and grandparents talking about equity investing. Although my granddad used to do equity investing, but it was like this back of the mind thing. Aaj ke din mein it's become active, it's become hands-on. And the people who are second and third generation, instead of setting up like more factories or focusing on growing the business, focusing on expanding the business, which is actually what contributes to positive economy growth, right? Everyone is taking whatever money and they are putting it in the stock market. So stock market is effectively taking money out of the system, right? It's not putting money into the system. Yeah, you're taking that money and you're putting it through a bourse and you're exchanging hands through it, but it's not really creating any asset. And that asset creation cycle is now missing. So that is one change that I am also noticing. And that to me is, on one hand, while I'm positive on emerging economies, but from a public market standpoint, I find that a little scary because usually consensus never makes money, right? And today the consensus is that markets are everything. Like मैं तो ऐसे लोगों से ये चीजें सुन चुका हूँ कि वो बोलते हैं कि यार मैं पेनी स्टॉक्स में पैसे नहीं लगाता, मैं स्मार्ट हूँ. मैं स्मॉल कैप्स में पैसे नहीं लगाता, मैं स्मार्ट हूँ. मैं मिड कैप्स में पैसे नहीं लगाता, मैं स्मार्ट हूँ. बट मेरा जो सेविंग्स था ना, मेरे जो 2 जनरेशन की सेविंग थी, उसका मैंने पोर्शन एक लेके ना मैंने ब्लू चिप्स पे इन्वेस्ट कर दिया. तो ब्लू चिप्स क्या है ना कि टूटेंगे नहीं, चाहे ग्रो नहीं होगा बट टूटेंगे नहीं पैसे मेरे, है ना. ये भी एक माइंडसेट है कि अगर मैंने 1000 में लगाए हैं तो ब्लू चिप क्या है, 1000 का ज्यादा से ज्यादा मेरे को 1100 दे देगा. ब्लू चिप है, मिड कैप की तरह तो नहीं है कि 2000 हो जाएगा या 1500 हो जाएगा, बट ये 1000 ना कभी टूटेगा नहीं, 500 कभी नहीं होगा. तो मैं दिमाग में ये सोच रहा था कि दिस इज नाउ बिकमिंग द कंसेंसस बेट. इट्स अ वेरी स्कैरी सिचुएशन. Like we were discussing, right? In one of our podcasts, that gold ran because it was a very under-owned asset, right? And nobody expected it to run ever. लोग क्या बोलते थे, गोल्ड, अबे गोल्ड तो 3% देता है यार साल का, क्या करोगे गोल्ड में इन्वेस्ट करके. आज के दिन में देखो, एंड आज के दिन में भी लोग क्या करेंगे यार, 3% देने वाला एसेट आज के दिन में 100% ऊपर है, इसको शॉर्ट करो. तो दे आर शॉर्टिंग एवरी टॉप एंड द मार्केट कीप्स ऑन गोइंग अप. इक्विटीज को लेके ठीक उल्टा मामला है. the market keeps falling. Just India, in the past 1 year, India indices have been flat. They've probably returned 5%. Dollar terms, it is 0%. Dollar terms, dollar basis, it is 0. So effectively, that's what's happening in the markets. Abhi over ownership मेरे को markets में दिख रही है, तो वो भी मेरे को थोड़ा डर लग रहा है. And just to coincide with your point, what you said, that like investing is sexy now. पहले जमाने में होता था कि धंधा बैठाना was sexy.
So I think like Indian markets का कितना 13% return होता है average, and inflation कितना
12%. Yeah, 12-13%. Inflation, inflation is roughly about 8%. You're making about 4% over that.
6.5. Yeah, so फिर वही होगा कि
60% बैंक दे रहा है आज के दिन.
That 8 and 12% वो कम होते जाएगा फिर.
Correct. But again, if you look at this, people are not looking at bank FDs today. Like the younger generation, SIPs is sexy. Right? And I kind of feel
return कम होते जाएगा.
Absolutely होगा ही, which is why in the last 1 year it's flat. But ये जनता डरी नहीं है. जितनी भी जनता कोविड के बाद आई है वो भी डरी नहीं है. उनको क्या पता है कोविड के टाइम पर का लो था and we made a V-shaped recovery 3 गुना हो गया बाजार, उसके ऊपर से नीचे तो कभी जा ही नहीं सकती. They've not seen market cycles, and I kind of feel that equities, because see, globally equities have done well. You know why? Globally equities have done well because US was operating at 0% interest rates.
Yes.
पैसा वहां से छप के आता था. Because US used to drive monetary policy across the world. So
and Japan
what about Japan? The cash carry trade of Japan, right? Yeah, people used to borrow from Japan and then invest.
Yeah.
Right. So आज के दिन में मुझे ऐसा ये लग रहा है कि the world used to rally, equities used to rally because US was operating at 0%.
Yes.
So I kind of feel that money will move from emerge to emerging, but it will go into economy. आज के दिन में factory India में बन रही है, right? Factory emerging economies में बन रही है, right?
Yes.
Emerged में नहीं बन रहा, which is why Trump is begging people to come and set up factories there, but nobody wants to do that. Maybe US will go through that entire cycle over the next 30-40 years. The American dream, which is what made America, right?
Yeah, Henry Ford.
Yeah, that phase. But from a public market standpoint, मुझे थोड़ा डर लग रहा है कि I think the world is still not fathomed. Like आज की generation जो बाजार में घुस रही है, equities में, मैं ये बता दूं, मुझे ऐसा लग रहा है वो fag end में घुस रहा है. When were equities attractive? When equities were hated? When something becomes loved, ना, वो आपको bumper return कभी नहीं देती.
Then when you're entering, हम बोलते हैं ना कि when you enter when everybody is loving it, you are the exit liquidity.
You are exit liquidity, bro.
उनका क्या हुआ?
Earnings report 4:30 बजे आएंगे.
Green candles
After market close.
अच्छा.
After market close.
Yeah, I think ETH is already back at 39.60 again, right?
Yes. It went to 38, 39 and like back to 39 and going up. Like I'm guessing कि 4,000 हो जाएगा.
तुम लोग ये देखो, ये जो मार्केट है, ये जो आज की जो मूवमेंट है मार्केट की, does it look like an FOMC day market? It does
Which
not.
is a good thing, right? It does not. I think it's like कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा बाजार को इससे.
कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा बाजार को. बाजार is absolutely stagnant. Like usually होता क्या था कि 10 बजे rate cut जैसी announce होता था, it was either a big green wick or a big red wick, at least one wick that used to happen, and then it would actually either die down on either of the side. आज के दिन में the market did not move at all, right?
If you see आज dominance भी crash कर रहा था BTC का काफी.
Dominance इसलिए crash कर रहा था because BTC kept falling. And if you see ETH and all the other pairs, they were pretty much stagnant at where their prices were, which is why the dominance
59.58 चले गया था. Like अभी पता नहीं कि कितना है, but let me see.
कौन सा?
Let's check. Let's check dominance.
Dominance was trending down during the day. In the last 4 hours, it's still ऐसा लग रहा है. Okay, it's now inching up. So it was at 60% during the day, and right now it fell to almost 59.57%. Now it's like going up again. So,
got it.
Let's see. It's
Patrick, to your point.
Yeah, I mean, today was surprising actually. मुझे लग रहा था कि मुझे जनरली क्या लगता है कि once BTC dominance crosses 60%, right, it moves up in a hurry. But today the opposite happened. I don't know.
नहीं, मैं ऋत्विक में कह रहा था कि coming to your point where जहाँ पे तू बात कर रहा था about trading on equity and stuff, one of the things that I look at maybe in a much long term period is अभी तो AI का narrative चल रहा है. You have even on blockchain you have AI protocols and stuff, and everybody just wants to sort of jump on the bandwagon. We are pretty much at the same. It's starting to feel like the same. कि वही fag end of the market pay where everybody is entering. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's just the beginning, but it seems like it because everybody just wants to jump into AI and all of that sort of narrative, AI and RWA and stuff. मुझे लग रहा है कि the next thing that could be investable is manufacturing, because eventually what will happen, all this AI narrative is everybody's going to afford, because if you look at how people are getting out of universities and their education system right now, everybody wants to be a developer or a designer or an AI architect and stuff like that. You don't have plumbers, you don't have masons, you don't have electrical engineers, you don't have people who are actually doing the groundwork. And I think the next set of companies, those $1 trillion companies, are going to be in this sort of line of work, and that is where the money will be.
Could be.
Yeah, I mean, I guess आज के लिए हमने काफी बात कर ली, 40 मिनट चला लिया. ऐसा होता है कि yeah, I know, right? और 40 मिनट चला लिया, और क्या बोलते हैं कि एक नरकुंडी ने बस एक ही बात बोली. सो एक और कुछ बात बोल दे भाई मार्केट के बारे में.
क्या बोलूं भाई, डालने तो डालो घुसो. लेवरेज 10x.
अच्छा, वो गेट ने 5L 5S की ट्रेडिंग कुछ मार्केट्स में बंद कर दी है. हाँ, so I think
लोगों के पैसे बचाए.
Have you checked if it's only your account? Because I haven't checked it from my account. मैं check करूँगा. Maybe because you traded so much, उन्होंने यार इतना
पैसे बना रहा है.
बट यार मैं इतने लोग जानता हूँ, जरूरी है 5L 3L में इतने पैसे कमाए हैं. ये बंद भी कर देना चाहिए इन लोगों को.
Qcoin ने बिल्कुल सही किया था. After a certain period of time, they realized there was so much money coming in. They capped all the trades. So I think 1000-1500 maximum आपकी बुक खोल सकते थे उसपे.
नरकुंडी चैंपियन है ना 5L 5S का. जिस दिन वो आया,
एक्चुअली Qcoin ने शट डाउन तभी किया था जब नरकुंडी ने स्टार्टेड ट्रेडिंग 5L 5S. रिमेंबर, इसलिए खरीदना शुरू किया एंड दे रिड्यूस देयर पोजीशन साइज.
वो बोल रही है कौन सा आईपी एड्रेस है, 6 फिगर बाइज आ रहे हैं यहाँ पे हर दिन, वो भी 5L और 3L में घुस रहे हैं. ये कौन आदमी है? इसको स्पॉट मार्केट नहीं दिख रही.
वो देखा तुमने वो क्या बोलते हैं, ओपिनियन लैब्स पॉली मार्केट का कंपेटिटर निकाला है बाइनेंस ने, बैक बाय सीजी. क्या है उसका वो, Yeezy Labs, YZI Labs, क्या है?
हाँ, करेक्ट है.
Yeezy Labs, they're backing it now. And तो अभी Aster निकाला उन्होंने हाइपर लिक्विड का वो, और अब
Aster की तो रेयर लगी पड़ी है. Aster प्राइस it's pretty much.
Poly market has been doing well, तो कि चलो ये भी, इसका भी एक कंपटीशन निकाल के देखते हैं कि चलेगा कि नहीं चलेगा. इतने पैसे बढ़े
भाई. सीजी एक चीज समझ गया इस बाजार में, एटलीस्ट ये साइकिल में जो मैं देख रहा हूँ, जिस धड़ल्ले से he is minting tokens, and through that network he is playing those I think he's understood one thing, that I mean, if you look at crypto, the base infrastructure has already been set, right? Every other infra is just bogus. The base infra has been set. जो actual front runner infra है उसको already adopt कर लिया है mainstream Wall Street ने, right? Store of value तो was always established, and he himself is a big proponent of BTC, right? Other than that, I think he's kind of figured out, whether you look at maybe like top 100 CMC, which is probably the Oracle layer, the financial layer, and ETH is going to be the chain, right? ETH and a couple of L2s are going to be the chains for the long future. And the financial ecosystems on all of these L2s are going to be the financial ecosystems which exist on ETH. Like Uni is going to be the preferred sort of DEX on even the L2s, right? Or an Aave is going to be the preferred financial layer for most of these L2s, including ETH. Link is going to be the preferred Oracle layer for all them. Other than that, everything else is, like we were discussing, it is a casino. And people love tokens. That's what he has figured out. कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा अगर एक टोकन 0 से 100 जाके दोबारा $1 पे आ जा रहा है, किसको कोई फर्क नहीं. दे वांट टू मूव ऑन टू द नेक्स्ट वन एंड nobody, like it's in the casino, nobody cares कि यार ओहो देखो लोग इधर हार रहे हैं. एक बंदा हारता हुआ निकलता है तो 10 और घुस जाते हैं वहां पे हारने के लिए. तो nobody
और
cares.
जो हारता है वो बोलता है मैं अगले वाले में बना लूंगा.
अगले बारे में बना लूंगा.
Because new narrative आ रहा है हर month.
That is why people are coming right to this. Like nobody wants like 10% or 20% return. People want like
boring
10x, 100x. तो उसीलिए तेरा 5L 3L टोकन भी चल रहे हैं, उसीलिए तेरा फ्यूचर्स भी चल रहा है, उसीलिए तेरे ऑप्शंस चल रहे हैं. लाइक आई मीन ऑल ऑफ दिस इज जस्ट टू लाइक get rich quickly.
And CZ's understood that whether it's his centralized exchange, not his, whatever, but the exchange, or whether it's the chain, more the number of tokens, exchange में more trading revenue, more listing fees. On chain pay more gas fees. So even if you're trading junk, you're paying to trade that junk. And fees are extremely high, right? So it's a win-win on either side, and he's understood that, which is why he's launching tokens left, right, and center. I remember एक तो उसने launch किया था कुछ. He had once warned a Kandura, and उसके basis पे भी उसने कोई meme token launch कर दिया था. I remember. And then broccoli shockley तो उसने किया ही था. I think that was his dog, right?
4 tokens.
अभी 4 मीम तो वो है ना, उसका कंपेटिटर है. 4 मीम तो पंप का कंपेटिटर है ना वो तो. तो ही इज अंडरस्टूड दैट डूड एंड ही इज गोइंग टू हैमर ऑन दैट. दैट्स इट. तो मोर टोकन्स. तो आज के दिन में लोग, आई थिंक कितने टोकन्स है टोटल में? वी वर डिस्कसिंग दैट अ कपल ऑफ डेज बैक. नो, हाउ मेनी टोकन्स एग्जिस्ट टुडे?
260 पता नहीं 1000 या
260 समथिंग. हां एग्जैक्टली
ऐसे कुछ था.
260,000.
नहीं ज्यादा.
has to be way more.
Million.
Yeah, it has to be in millions, right? Yeah, it has to be in millions.
Yeah.
20,
so
30
it's going to keep on going more. It'll just keep on growing. It'll just keep on growing.
इसमें यानी इसमें तो आधे तो like I mean if they obviously they can't like just clean it up, right? कि आधे तो इसमें वो डिफॉल्ट पड़े होंगे.
Yeah, exactly.
ठीक है भाई, आज के लिए आई थिंक इतना ज्ञान बहुत है. But,
आज के लिए इतना ही. आपकी तरह हम भी मायूस.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, sorry. 37 million unique tokens exist today.
Oh. 37 million.
Pump पे I think 16 million ऐसे कुछ थे.
Oh yeah, that was the figure, right?
Majority वही है. पंप और ये पिंक सेल और ये BNB वाले जो है यही टोकन.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, like, share, subscribe.
Please.
And ring the bell icon.
Ring the bell icon और नीचे कमेंट में प्लीज नरकुंडी को गाली दो अगर आपका
like, comment, share, subscribe.
Comment डालें that should he wear his straw hat fedora or not.
Yes. We await your comment for that on that.
चले.
ठीक है. All right. See you guys.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Brother. Okay, bye. मैं खाना खाने आ रहा हूँ, मुझको भूख लग रही है. आज का थोड़ा ज्यादा ज्ञान हो गया था dude. We need to keep it more fun.
कोई बात नहीं. I'll wear my fedora for fun.
Yes. Okay, bye.
Bye.